The City of London has always been a beacon for writers like me. With its labyrinthine alleys, centuries, old legends, and an ambience rich with tales both told and untold, my best friend, Amelia, and I decided to immerse ourselves in this atmosphere by choosing a stay that resonated with the city's history, an AIRBNB located in a converted attic of an ancient Victorian house. The listing showcased a cozy attic space, fitted with 2 rickety bunk beds, weathered wooden beams overhead, and a small round window emitting a soft glow. The reviews lauded its authentic, historic charm. This should have been our first hint. Our initial day in the city brimmed with exploration, and London's enchantment held us captivated. But as nightfall blanketed the city, the bustling sounds of daytime activities gave way to an unsettling stillness, punctuated occasionally by an owl's hoot or the distant rustling of wind. That night, Amelia opted for the lower bunk, finding solace closer to the ground. Feeling somewhat daring, I took the top. Exhaustion soon pulled us into a deep slumber. Around 4 a.m., the quiet was shattered by unmistakable footsteps echoing from the hallway. My heart raced. Was it just the house settling? Maybe another guest. Then, realization dawned. We'd forgotten to lock our door. A gradual creak signaled our door, inching open. From my elevated position, I glimpsed a distorted shadow, grotesquely illuminated by the faint streetlight outside. The silhouette was human, but unnaturally proportioned. Elongated limbs, fingers, ending in sharp points, and an oversized head atop a gaunt body. Paralyzed by fear, I watched as this figure began humming a chilling, almost ancient lullaby, its notes echoing eerily. As it edged closer to Amelia's bed, adrenaline surged. I snatched an old-fashioned lamp and hurled it at the apparition. The ensuing crash momentarily dispersed the shadow. Startled awake by the noise, Amelia screamed upon seeing our unwelcome guest. I seized her hand, and we dashed down the creaky stairs, our frantic footsteps intertwining with a mocking laughter from behind. Reaching the ground floor, we attempted the front door. It was jammed, desperation mounting. A window nearby shattered, spewing glass shards and revealing those all too. Familiar, elongated fingers. Spotting a back door that led to a garden, we made a beeline for it, bursting out into the moonlight. Distant sirens seemed to promise safety. Minutes, which felt like hours, passed before we encountered our Airbnb neighbors, John and Martha, drawn by the commotion and the glare of police lights. They approached. "It's clear," whispered John, his stern face a mask of concern. "But you shouldn't return there tonight." While the police found no intruder, they uncovered a long-sealed basement. Inside, amidst ancient artifacts, was a photograph. It depicted a tall, skeletal man with unsettling, familiar eyes and elongated fingers. Following day, we relocated to a hotel in London's vibrant heart. John later visited, relaying eerie tales of the Victorian house's dark past and legends of its previous owner. An oddly shaped man with peculiar tendencies, said to hum lullabies in nocturnal hours. The horrors of that night are forever etched into our memories. For us, London's charm is now shadowed by the phantom footsteps in darkness, the haunting sound of a door's slow creak, and a lullaby we pray never to hear again. The chime of my phone broke the monotony of the quiet afternoon. A new booking had come in for my Airbnb. Scanning the guest profile, I noticed it was a man named Brian. Only 2 nights. Should be easy enough, I thought. My house with its multiple bedrooms, always had this welcoming ambiance, perfect for my little AIRBNB side hustle. The room I rented out was adjacent to mine, with this heartwarming view of the garden, but the guest bathroom was by the main entrance. A tiny imperfection I always made sure to mention to my guests. As dusk settled, there was a knock. Opening the door, I was met by Brian, a tall figure casting long shadows with the evening sun behind him. His demeanor was quiet, almost too quiet. After a quick tour, emphasizing the guest bathroom location, I wished him a good night. That night, I struggled to find sleep. Maybe it was the weight of the day, or perhaps an unexplainable anxiety. I loved having the curtains open. The trees outside my patio always had this calming effect. The swaying branches, bathed in moonlight, usually lulled me to sleep. But that night, as I was on the edge of drifting off, a shadow moved across the view. A moment of sheer terror gripped me when I realized someone was standing outside my patio door. It was Brian. He began speaking, his voice eerily calm, asking about places to eat nearby. I was frozen, caught between fear and confusion. Managing to reply curtly, I tried to signal that this wasn't the time or place. He seemed to understand and retreated. The morning light brought a sense of normalcy. But I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was just lost or confused in a new house. Still, I locked my bedroom door the next night. Waking up the next day, Brian was gone, and I felt a sigh of relief. But that relief was short-lived. A few days later, my phone buzzed with a new review. Brian's words made my blood run cold. Great place. It began. However, I found it odd that the bathroom was inside the host's bedroom. Uncomfortable entering her room during night and morning, I felt sick. The realization that he had entered my room, maybe more than once, while I was asleep, was too much to bear. Every time I think of that night, I feel a chill, an unsettling shadow cast over my usually warm home. I made some changes to my security and hoped I'd never have a guest like that again. The colors of fall had always been a favorite of mine, and in the hopes of escaping the city's relentless bustle in the fall of 2021, I booked a remote cabin through AIRBNB. It seemed ideal for a retreat, isolated, surrounded by woods, and described as the perfect place for self-reflection. The drive to the cabin was picturesque. The trees bled shades of orange, gold, and red, with their leaves carpeting the narrow road. As the path wove further from the main roads, my cell reception flickered and then disappeared entirely. For a brief moment, panic settled in. But I shook it off. After all, the idea was to disconnect. The cabin, when it finally appeared through the trees, was rustic and charming. No other houses in sight, just the quiet whisper of nature and the soft crunch of dried leaves beneath my shoes. It was getting late, and as I unlocked the door, ready to settle in, a scream sliced through the evening air. "Help, please. Help me," I froze, hand on the doorknob. From the edge of the woods, a man stumbled forward, his face obscured by the descending twilight. It struck me immediately as odd. The man didn't appear injured. His clothes weren't torn, and there was no blood that I could see. His shout sounded more aggressive than desperate. My gut twisted with unease. I hesitated by the door, not wanting to open it. "What's the matter?" I yelled, trying to keep my voice steady. "My car broke down. I need to make a call." He was now approaching the cabin, his footsteps heavy, the desperation in his voice edged with something darker. My suspicions took hold. If he had truly wandered for help, surely he would have mentioned the issue earlier. "Sorry, I don't have any signal here," I responded, lying. For all I knew, he could have seen me drive up, aware that my car was working just fine. He paused, eyes scanning the cabin. "Just let me in. It's freezing out here." My heart raced. "There's a town about 10 miles back. They'll have a phone you can use." With a growl of frustration, he turned, disappearing back into the shadows of the woods. I waited for what felt like hours. Every rustle of the wind, every nocturnal creature's movement sending shivers down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Once I was sure he was gone, I darted around the cabin, double-checking the locks on the doors and windows. That's when I saw it, a small window, and the back room was shattered, shards of glass, sparkling ominously on the wooden floor. Rushing outside, I tried to temporarily fix the broken window, using a plastic sheet and duct tape from my car's emergency kit. As night deepened, I ventured back inside, each sound amplified by the darkness and my growing fear. I barely slept, jumping at every noise. The wind rustling the trees, the creaks of the settling cabin. But as the hours dragged on, a more unsettling noise emerged. The sound of metal scraping against wood. It was subtle, almost drowned out by the other noises of the night, but unmistakably there. Dawn's light brought no relief. A fresh examination revealed the small window pried open, the plastic ripped away. My temporary solution had been no match for a determined intruder. He had tried to enter while I was inside. I grabbed my belongings and fled the cabin, driving without stopping until I reached the next town. I immediately contacted the Airbnb host and reported the incident, my hands trembling as I recounted the events of the night. The host was sympathetic, offering a full refund and assurance that they'd look into the matter. But nothing could ease the dread lodged in my chest. It wasn't just the break, an attempt that haunted me, but the nagging thought that had the window been bigger, or had I not heeded my intuition, I might not have made it out unharmed. I was lucky. The wild beauty of that remote location, once so enticing, had taken on a more sinister aspect. The silent woods hid secrets, and I had come perilously close to becoming one of them. I often wonder about that man, his intentions, and what might have happened if I had let him in. One thing was for certain: I would always trust my instincts. The woods may whisper, but gut feelings scream, and it's always wise to listen. Rachel and I were always adventurous spirits. Our annual getaway this year led us to an Airbnb, a cabin amidst the stunning vistas of the Colorado mountains, tucked away in the tranquility of the wilderness. It seemed perfect for our escape from city life. The cabin was rustic and charming, providing an idyllic backdrop to our days filled with hikes, home, cooked meals, and evenings by the crackling fireplace. Everything felt so peaceful, so right. That tranquility, however, was violently shattered one night. The distinctive sound of a key turning in the lock jolted me awake. A quick glance at my phone confirmed my fear. It was past midnight. The color drained from Rachel's face when I shared what I'd heard. We were alone in the wilderness, miles away from any neighbor. We huddled together in our room, hearts pounding as we heard the front door creak open, followed by the soft, ominous thuds of boots on the cabin floor. The chilly breeze that slipped through the door seemed to carry an aura of impending danger. I clutched a hiking stick, our only semblance of a weapon, while Rachel's trembling fingers hovered over her phone, ready to dial 911. What froze the blood in my veins was the humming that followed, a man's voice humming our tune, a song we'd been singing during our hike. A cold realization washed over us. This was no random intrusion. He knew us, had been watching us. Fueled by adrenaline and fear, I decided to face our intruder. Nothing could have prepared me for the sight that awaited. A man, disheveled, his wild eyes reflecting the same terror I felt. But it was the familiar keychain in his hand that brought a lump to my throat. He lunged, a predatory snarl escaping his lips. I swung my stick in response, catching him off guard. He stumbled, and we seized the moment, bolting from the room and sprinting for the front door. Rachel's voice echoed in the cabin, frantically relaying our situation to the police. As we ran into the biting cold, we could hear him behind us, a menacing humming filling the silent night. The darkness seemed to close in around us, making the chase even more terrifying. Then, without warning, the ground beneath us vanished. A hidden cellar swallowed us. Rachel's scream and the sharp pain in my leg ringing in my ears. In the deafening silence that followed, we could hear our pursuer's confusion, his footsteps fading away. The climb out of the cellar was agonizingly slow, but the wailing sirens in the distance fueled our determination. We were found by the police, shaken and scared, but alive. The haunting image of our intruder, with his copied keys and wild eyes, was forever etched in my memory. Our retreat, once a sanctuary, was now a monument to our terror. We were taken to the hospital, where I had to have stitches in my leg. The police investigated the cabin and found evidence that the intruder had been watching us for some time. He had even planted a listening device in our room. We never found out who the intruder was, but we knew that we would never forget our terrifying experience. We had learned a valuable lesson about the dangers of solitude